Next question, right here.
I suppose my question is, was there any discussion of, for example, the existence of succubi and their magic powers assumes that everyone feels sexual attraction. So was there any discussion, like, asexual people are immune to their powers or something? I mean, that's just an example, but that general sort of topic.
We do have at least one place, and goodness, this was just within the past few weeks. Oh, it was in the Potion of Love. Because in the Dungeon Master's Guide, there's a love potion. And the text, in the old days, the text would say, you drink it and you fall in love with the next person you see of the opposite gender. Now, as a gay person, I had to call bullshit on that. But also, we were mindful of the fact that there are also people who are asexual. And so the way it's worded is, you fall in love with the next type of person that you fall in love with. So it's basically leaves an out, because so if a character doesn't fall in love with anyone of any type, then they are effectively immune.
Yeah, so that's a good way to power game now.
Yes, you can power game the Potion of Love by being asexual.
What did you not know my character?
But we're assuming character's sexuality. I'll talk a moment about the incubus and the succubus, because we actually haven't talked much about, we talked about sex and gender, but we haven't talked much this evening yet with you about sexuality itself. This is also something we're very mindful of in the Monster Manual. Tonight we've mostly been talking about the Player's Handbook. How many of you have seen the Monster Manual? So if you've paged through and you've gone to the succubus, you'll see that our design of that monster was influenced by our, not only mindfulness of some of these issues, but also our historical mindfulness. And what I mean by that is, it's no longer just the succubus, the entry is the succubus and the incubus. Because a weird blind spot in D&D in the past, given the fact that the history of the succubus in in human mythology, has always been paired with the incubus, the male version of this demon. But D&D has always just focused on the female seducer, even though in European folklore, well, there was also always the male one. And so we now have both the male and the female, and this is a part of our policy, for lack of a better term, of equal opportunity seduction. And I mentioned that, like, our female characters, we don't want them to have the chainmail bikini aesthetic, and that's shorthand for our female characters should not be objects. But don't misunderstand us, because sometimes when game creators start going down this path, and also social commentators start talking about it, it can very easily lead to a place of Puritanism, where suddenly the desire to not have people as objects instead turns into a denial of human sexuality. And there's a very fine line to walk, because desire is a very powerful part of the human experience, and a very powerful part of storytelling. And so the last thing we wanted to do was rob all of our characters of desire, because falling in love, falling in lust, these are really important human stories. And even though they often don't become the feature of a particular D&D adventure, they're often a part of a character's backstory. They're a part of the construction of our different worlds. Kingdoms have risen and kingdoms have fallen because of characters' love or sexual desire for each other. And so, it's a really important distinction for us that we don't want any of our characters, women in particular, because of how female characters have typically been portrayed, we don't want them to be objects, but that does not mean we want to rob our characters of sexuality, because at that point we're making them less human, or less elven, whatever in our game's case, whatever their species might be.
So you have a question in the back?
Yeah, so out of curiosity, like you're talking about the fact that you want to consider, non-heteronormative, non-cisgender normative identities. Have you talked any about like the fluidity of identities? Maybe someone has identified as a gay man for years and is now going to be a straight woman, just like they wake up one day after being a man for 40 years and like, actually I think I'm a woman now. Like, because these experiences are fluid for humans. And the same thing with sexuality. Maybe you'll be bisexual for 20 years and suddenly like, actually, I haven't been attracted to a man in a long time. I think I'm just gay.
And our game is open-ended enough that those stories are very easy to explore. And even mechanically, the game provides fairly easy ways to actually physically change your sex. With the polymorph spell, alter self, your character could change from male to female to gender fluid on a daily basis with magic. So it's a kind of wonderfully wide open field, including exploring fluid sexuality.
So I guess the follow-up then is like, yeah, the potential is there where you like you mentioned, like you're going to release official adventures and manuals and stuff. Is this a policy that your company is going to carry forward into official materials? Will we see some sort of official adventure in which you go to meet the king, turns out they're actually a genie? That was a terrible pun.
We could. We are open to all possibilities. But the thing with our game, and this is a big difference between ours and, say, a video game where the narrative is set by the designers, is often we are providing the tools for our players to create the narrative. So we can explore these sorts of things with our NPCs, but we even more want to create an open space so that our players can explore these things with their characters. Because in the end, that will be a far more meaningful exploration. Because a non-player character might be present for a few sessions, whereas a character you have, especially, just think about the thrill if you're in a long-running campaign, that's a 2-year campaign, you're playing from 1st to 20th level, and actually play through that the transformation you talked about. I think that would be an awesome campaign.
Yeah, and I think for us, in terms of like the stories we create, I think it's something that we are mindful of and are thinking of. But we also don't want to come in a position of we want to do it because it makes sense for the story and because it's telling a good story. We don't want to be in a position of where we're just I'm not trying to put it, but maybe just like.
We don't want to have a checklist.
Yeah, exactly. We don't want to have a checklist. We don't want to feel like, oh, we're doing this, aren't we the good guys? Hey, we want to be more like, oh, this is a really great story, and this is part of it. But it's not something where we're just adding it for the sake of adding it. We're adding it because that's something which in our story vocabulary for the storyline is making it more compelling. But it's definitely something that we are open to and that we would consider as part of this greater discussion. Part of it too is in terms of the stories we're building. That is the mechanics are kind of like maybe like a year or two ahead in terms of how we're implementing things. We're just kind of firing up stories, doing adventures. The first story we did, the Tyranny of Dragons storyline, was by design fairly straightforward. It's heroes fighting dragons. I think our first couple ones are also kind of really embracing some pretty typical D&D tropes to kind of get the classics out there, but also for us as we start getting better at what we're doing, then we can do things that are more out of the box for fantasy, especially for Dungeons and Dragons. So that's definitely something which we consider and think of. It's really just a matter of finding the right storyline to make it work.
Because also, one of the reasons why we like to emphasize telling wonderful stories with your own character is with our NPCs, you often don't have access to their inner life. Now, in some of the best adventures, their inner life does come out in the storytelling. But often, especially like, city is under siege, the dragon god is bursting into our world, cities are burning down. Often there's not an opportunity in the story we might be telling to explore some of these narratives, but there's absolutely the freedom, and we're hoping some of the material we've put in the player's handbook encourages the players that with their characters, while they're grappling with all these world-shaking events, they're exploring the transformations that are going on within their characters and between characters, because often there are important relationships between the members of a party of adventurers.
Sorry to dominate the conversation, but to your checklist point, I'm going to throw your own words in your face and say that if you think of the problem isn't that it's going to be a checklist thing. The problem is that you guys don't think about us.
No,
it's like
yeah.
If you don't deliberately try, you're not going to include these people.
Oh yeah,
and that's definitely
we agree. We agree 100%, and that is why the player's handbook itself talks about gender fluidity and you deciding your character's sexuality.
Yeah. No, and I think it's definitely something where I think it's for our adventures, we aren't as far along as we were in how we were able to present the player's handbook, but it's definitely where we want to be. Like that is definitely the destination we want to drive to. But I guess on the hand, it's always kind of funny because I don't want to say we're definitely going to do that within the next year. But it's like, but within a few years, like 3 years, yes. Like I think within 3 years we would definitely have.
What did you say?
Yeah, and if you are sensing any hesitance from us, it isn't because we have any doubt about wanting to explore this. What we've done in the player's handbook should really be an indication to everybody where our heart is. I mean, we have put this in the main book of Dungeons and Dragons. We simply are saying, we'll see, because we actually take it so seriously. We don't want to be cavalier and just say, oh yeah, we'll toss it in somewhere so we can then pat ourselves in the back that, hey, we did it. No,
Yeah.
when we do it, we want to do it.
Exactly.
We want it to
Exactly.
be meaningful. We want
Yeah.
it to touch people. We want to expand people's perspectives so that they realize that other humans have very different experience of their own gender identity, of their sexuality. We want it to have power.
Yeah.
And so that's really what's going on. It's not like, we're not sure if we want to do it. It's like, no, hell yes, we want to do it, but we're going to do it right. And again, we already want to do what we've done in the player's handbook better.
Yeah, exactly. And that's definitely something where we have gotten feedback on the presentation of the player's handbook, and I'm already thinking, what can we do to improve it? Because we definitely want, like, to us, this is just the first step. This is only the beginning. It's not like, oh, we're done, and we just wander off, right? Like, it's the first of many steps.